Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced new and stricter COVID-19 measures under the Disaster Risk Management Act effective today.
The curfew hour will remain at 8 p.m. nightly to 5 a.m. the following morning. Starting Thursday, March 4, there must be a work-from-home arrangement in the public sector. Effective the 8th of March, funerals and burials will be prohibited.
Jamaica recorded 336 new cases of COVID-19 and 3 additional fatalities yesterday, pushing the total number of cases to 23,599 and the death toll to 425. Dr. Christopher Tufton announced yesterday that the country now averages 48 admissions per day into the hospitals across the country of COVID-19 patients.
We're averaging an infection rate of 1.3, which means that every person infected with COVID-19 will infect approximately 1.3 others. If this rate is not reduced, we will continue to see a rise in infections, which will ultimately lead to an increase in the number of persons that are hospitalized.
And the University Hospital of the West Indies, UHWI, in expressing regrets on the loss of 17-year-old Jalissa McGowan, says they have now launched an investigation surrounding her death on Friday. Good evening. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced new and stricter COVID-19 measures under the Disaster Risk Management Act effective today, March 1. The government has implemented these measures amid an increase in COVID-19 hospitalizations. According to Prime Minister Holness at a press conference on Sunday evening, the government has been forced to shift policy efforts in order to preserve lives and livelihoods.
The pressures that we are seeing on our health system clearly indicate the need for decisive action. The Cabinet met yesterday and agreed on the following measures under the Disaster Risk Management Act, commencing March 1. Generally, the measures are for 3 weeks in the first instance and, of course, are constantly under review. However, given the need for notice to facilitate implementation, not all of the measures, the new measures, will come into effect as of tomorrow. The curfew hour will remain at 8 p.m. nightly to 5 a.m. the following morning until March 23rd, 2021 at 5 a.m. Zoos, parks, gyms, attractions, and bars will be closed at 6 p.m. and this will continue in effect until the 22nd of March 2021. This is another measure which is both an institutional measure and it is also a measure of controlling movement.
Prime Minister Holness also announced strict work-from-home arrangement for the public sector, which will take effect on March 4, while he is encouraging the private sector to facilitate the same for their employees.
Starting Thursday, March 4, 2021, there must be a work-from-home arrangement in the public sector, and the permanent secretaries are directed to have only persons who work in critical service delivery and where the nature of the work performed requires that the job functions be performed at the physical office location. This means that for the public sector, meaning ministries, departments, and agencies, there is now a hard work-from-home rule. For the private sector, you are mandated to do similarly, review your business processes, and where it is possible and convenient, we encourage you to have your staff work from home. If there is a member of staff that has a comorbidity or has someone who is ill at home or has someone who has some challenges, that person can apply or should apply to their employer, and the employer is obliged to allow them to work from home.
The Prime Minister further announced that effective March 8, all funerals and burials will be prohibited for a period of 2 weeks, while weddings are allowed with a maximum of 25 persons.
The new measures as it relates to funeral, effective the 8th of March to the 22nd of March, funerals and burials will be prohibited. We have given a directive to the municipal authorities that no burial orders should be issued. Let me explain what this means. So from the 1st to the 7th, funerals that were already scheduled, which we think is only fair, we give notice. So those funerals can go ahead, but they must conform with the rules under the Disaster Risk Management Act. 10 mourners and 5 inclusive clergy and attendants. 15, no more. We have to take this drastic action because we do not see any willingness on the part of our brothers and sisters. Not everyone, some people do comply. We will continue to allow weddings, except that the cap that we had placed on weddings, which was 50, we have now halved that, so only 25 persons, including the bride, groom, who else we need? The bride, groom, pastor, and the 2 witnesses. I mean, I'm sorry to do this, but we have to do it. So I really hope that we have not disrupted anyone's wedding plans, but for the next 3 weeks, this is what we will have to do.
Effective March 4, all persons entering the country, both Jamaicans and non-nationals, will be required to present a negative coronavirus COVID-19 test at the check-in for their flights. According to the Prime Minister, the test must be conducted within 72 hours prior to the date of travel.
We think it is now justified in these circumstances to require Jamaicans coming home to present a negative COVID-19 test, which was conducted within 72 hours prior to the travel date at the check-in for their flights. This applies not just to Jamaicans. Remember, it was applicable to non-Jamaicans before, to some non-Jamaicans traveling. Now, everyone coming into Jamaica, I want to be clear on that, everyone coming into Jamaica must present a negative COVID-19 test, which was conducted within 72 hours prior to the date of travel. And they must present this at check-in. You will hear more about this as the order is made public. Business travelers were always required to present their tests, and they were tested again, and upon a negative test, they were allowed to go and do their business and return to where they were staying. This will continue to be the case, but they must also present a pre-test. They will be tested, but now we are going to require that they pay for their tests.
In the meantime, the Prime Minister informed that the government is continuing to restrict flights coming directly from the United Kingdom, UK, and this will continue until the 22nd of March. Meanwhile, the opposition People's National Party, PNP, says it notes the long overdue appearance of the Prime Minister to address the nation on his government's poor management of the COVID-19 pandemic. Responding to the Prime Minister's presentation at yesterday's press conference, Leader of the Opposition Mark Golding said, quote, "I am glad that our prompting has finally brought the Prime Minister out from hiding. He has ignored our proposals and said nothing much that is new, other than belatedly enacting the requirement for incoming passengers to have a negative COVID-19 test result before traveling. The opposition has been urging the government to enact this requirement for many months," end quote. The opposition leader said that Jamaicans are astounded by the Prime Minister's announcement that the country must wait a further 8 weeks to receive the first batch of purchased vaccines, when several of our regional counterparts have already begun vaccinating their populations. The opposition says it is also concerned that the measure banning burials is not in step with our reality. As the country braces for yet another extension to the curfew orders, Mr. Golding said he reiterates his call for a strong task force headed by the Prime Minister to take charge of the vaccine procurement effort, which is absolutely critical to the nation's recovery and well-being. Still in COVID-19 news, Jamaica recorded 336 new cases of COVID-19 and 3 additional fatalities yesterday, pushing the total number of cases to 23,599 and the death toll to 425. No details were provided on the recently deceased in the update from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. However, of the 336 new cases, there were 201 males and 133 females, with ages ranging from 3 months to 97 years old. The cases were recorded in St. James, 111 cases, Kingston and St. Andrew, 83, St. Catherine, 54, St. Anne, 27, Hanover, 24, St. Thomas, 8, Manchester, 8, Westmoreland, 7, St. Mary, 4, Clarendon, 3, Portland, 3, Trelawney, 3, and St. Elizabeth, 1. The country also recorded 92 recoveries, bringing the total number of recoveries to 13,502. Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Christopher Tufton, announced yesterday that the country now averages 48 admissions per day into the hospitals across the country of COVID-19 patients. He was speaking at the government's COVID-19 press conference.
The increase in the number of COVID-19 cases in the country remains a cause for concern. The increase means more active cases requiring management by the health team. A portion of these active cases would require monitoring in hospitals, and so a rise in the hospitalization of COVID-19 patients have become our reality. As of today, we are realizing a hospitalization rate of some 7%. That is, of the total number of persons who are tested positive for COVID-19, approximately 7% of those are serious enough to require hospitalization. We now average some 48 admissions per day across all our hospitals. Based on the epidemiological data, we're averaging an infection rate, or R0 rate, as said earlier, of 1.3, which means that every person infected with COVID-19 will infect approximately 1.3 others. If this rate is not reduced, we will continue to see a rise in infections, which will ultimately lead to an increase in the number of persons that are hospitalized.
Dr. Tufton explained the ministry's surge plan that has been implemented due to the increase in hospitalization as a result of the uptick in COVID-19 cases.
The ministry is now implementing its surge plan that has been developed to respond to the increased levels of hospitalization. In implementing the plan, the following actions are being taken. St. Joseph's COVID-19 ward at St. Joseph's Hospital, this is a 36-bed facility, is now in operation with an occupancy of approximately 8 persons. As the weeks move on, we will admit more patients to this ward based, of course, on the infection rate. Falmouth Hospital COVID-19 ward, this 36-bed facility is now fully equipped and will begin to admit patients on Thursday, March 2nd, 2021. While the building is complete, the appropriate infection prevention and control measures must be completed before the building is safe, especially for patients with severe acute respiratory illness. So that will be opened later on this week. Field Hospital, we have moved the field hospital that had been generously donated by the United States government. This hospital is now to be housed at the Spanish Town Hospital grounds, where the 40 beds will be used to support patients in that facility who are suffering from COVID-19. And at the University Hospital of the West Indies, there's some conversion taking place from regular wards to COVID wards. The management of the UHWI has now completed the conversion of an additional ward for the admission of COVID patients, numbering some 24 beds.
The Health and Wellness Minister further explained that adding additional staffing to deal with the treatment and patient care relating to the virus is part of their surge plan.
Beds are not the only response in this surge plan, therefore, so we have increased hiring of staff in the Southeast Regional Health Authority and the Western Regional Health Authority, which have the main Type A hospitals. In the Western Regional Health Authority, which consists of St. James, Trelawney, Hanover, and Westmoreland, 18 additional temporary doctors have been approved, with 6 receiving contracts to start tomorrow morning. 42 nurses, assistant nurses, and patient care assistants are being hired, with some 14 being interviewed tomorrow, Monday, March 1st. In the Southeast Regional Health Authority, that consists of Kingston, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, and St. Catherine, 43 additional temporary doctors have been approved, with 4 receiving contracts to start tomorrow, and 236 nurses, assistant nurses, and patient care assistants are being hired, with contracts being finalized for deployment within the next 2 weeks. I pause here from my script to also highlight a challenge that we face, a real challenge, which is the mass recruitment of our public health team. The University Hospital alone, they tell me, from January to date, 2021, have lost over 70 nurses who have been recruited by other countries, paying much more attractive salaries, of course, trying to address their own issues.
Meanwhile, Dr. Tufton also gave an update on the country's COVID-19 vaccination.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness, in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, my colleague Minister Johnson Smith, are the sort of leads on securing vaccines through various discussions, negotiations, bilateral and otherwise. I wish to thank again the government and people of India for their donation of 50,000 vaccines, something that has been in the works for some time, but the most significant clarity brought to bear on it with the announcement by the High Commissioner this past week. This shipment is expected to land in Jamaica on or before Thursday of this week. I wish also to announce the provision of an additional arrival, some 14,400 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine that will be delivered to the island on or before March 11th. And this is part of the COVAX arrangement that has been signed off on, all the arrangements made. It's just the logistics now of moving that from Europe to Jamaica. The other allocations in that first batch we expect between now and May this year, 2021. We can now confirm that the allocation under the African Medical Supply Platform, another avenue that we've been working on and involving CARICOM, has been approved for a total of some 1.8 million doses of vaccines to be supplied to Jamaica starting in April.
The University Hospital of the West Indies, UHWI, has issued a statement saying it deeply regrets the loss of 17-year-old Jalissa McGowan and has launched an investigation surrounding her death on Friday. This comes after the teen and her parents were allegedly turned away from the hospital. The mother says the hospital staff told her that they would need a proper space to provide life-saving oxygen, but said they had no room. The teen passed away at the Andrews Memorial Hospital in the corporate area after failed attempts to resuscitate her. The university hospital says they are committed to giving a full disclosure of the findings of the investigation upon its conclusion. The hospital also assures the public that every effort is made by the staff to preserve the lives of all who seek treatment and care at its institution. In other news, a police officer is now in hospital in serious but stable condition after he was stabbed multiple times by two attackers. The attack took place around 3:15 a.m. Saturday morning while the police officer was heading to work. Reports are that the officer was traveling along a section of the Maypen leg of Highway 2000 when his car developed mechanical problems. Head of operations for the Clarendon Police Division, Christopher Phillips, explained that the officer stopped to investigate and was attacked by a man armed with a shotgun and a knife, whom the policeman managed to fight off. However, he was stabbed several times during the struggle.
So he stopped to change his tire. Whilst he was there, he was approached by a man who demanded that he put his wallet and all that he have on the car itself. He observed that the man had what appears to be a shotgun. Quick response, he managed to hold on to that weapon, and so a struggle ensued, and during that struggle he managed to disarm the attacker, notwithstanding he was stabbed 14 times in the back and an injury to his left hand. It's very unfortunate, and it is something that we're taking very seriously as to what happened this morning.
SSP Phillips further added that the police in the meantime are investigating whether the debris that caused the puncture to the policeman's vehicle is part of a new scheme by robbers to target motorists.
It's very unfortunate, and it is something that we're taking very seriously as to what happened this morning, because my highway patrol also indicated that there was another vehicle that got damaged on the toll based on those rocks that were thrown. So we suspect that there was a serious criminal operation that was taking place early in the morning. We now have to look on those hotspot areas for criminal activities like that. They want to get persons to stop so that they can, rob persons and do their criminal act there. We are going to look on how best we can treat with that, but at the same time we're asking persons to be extremely careful when they're traveling along the roadway early morning, late at nights and so on. At least allow somebody to know where you're at. If you suspect that you're in danger, try not to stop. Move to the safest point before you can stop, and have the police on speed dial too, so that we can respond.
A security curfew has been imposed on the communities of Young Street, King Street and Captured Land in Lionel Town in South Clarendon. The measure is in response to increased gang activities in the area. Soldiers and police personnel have been stationed at strategic points in the community to monitor movement. Our news team observed as the soldiers and policemen checked vehicles. Head of operations for Clarendon, Superintendent Christopher Phillips, explained that the police will use the curfew period to improve the relationship with residents, while also targeting wanted men.
Apart from just the checkpoints that you see, we have several other operations that will be taking place in this space, some secondary operations and multiple patrols to support what is happening. Also, we have our community safety and security team that is going through the community because they have some unfinished business. We have been interacting with this community ever since we started having the challenges. More than one walkthroughs through the community. We have managed so far to establish a police youth club in the Captureland area, and those youngsters very welcoming of that initiative. So we are doing some work in the community, but outside of that we are aware that there are some criminal elements who still linger around and seeking to create mayhem in the space based on the intelligence that we have. So we are using the opportunity to get to the root of this and to bring back this community to a state of normalcy so that the residents here can enjoy peaceful living. There are some very decent law-abiding citizens living in this part of the world. I can tell you, I had personal interactions with a few persons who really want to see better for their community. The people are in fear, and so we have to continue to do what we have to do to reassure them and to let them know that we are here to support them and to make the place safer for all of them.
The police officers say there have been a series of fire bombings, shootings and killings in the communities over the last 2 months. The St. James Police say they have seized 7.45 rounds of ammunition during an operation on Albion Lane, Montego Bay, St. James yesterday. Reports from the Montego Bay Police are that about 9:40 p.m. lawmen were in the area when they saw a group of men at an illegal party. On seeing the police, the men ran. The area was searched and a magazine containing the rounds was seen on the ground. Investigation continue into the incident. And those are some of the stories making news. We will return with more news on the Prime Minister expressing pleasure with the National Water Commission's efforts to install a transmission main along Spanish Town Main Road in Kingston, as well as news that a Memorandum of Understanding MOU has been signed between the Jamaica Social Investment Fund JSIF and the Jamaica Bauxite Institute JBI. But first, we will take a break and then join Christopher Scott with sports.